Pete Alonso. We know he passed Darryl Strawberry, Mets all-time home run leader. He did sign a 2-year contract in the offseason, but we know he can opt out at the end of this season. Tim, do you expect Alonso to opt out? And if he does, do you think it would be more about increasing the pay or looking for a longer-term deal?
Yes to all of those questions. Yeah, I think barring a serious injury, Pete Alonso is going to opt out. The contract was designed for him to opt out. Really, unless he had got hurt or had a really bad season, he was going to opt out from the start of the year. And obviously, he's had a better campaign in 2025 than he had in either of 23 or 24. The other big thing that's changed is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. signed a 14-year, $500 million contract earlier this season, kind of reset the market for first basemen. So, is Alonso in Guerrero's class? Probably not. He's going to be 5 years older than Guerrero was when he signed the deal. But that's not going to stop Scott Boras from using that as another peg in a first base market that had kind of stagnated for a while. Alonso getting $30 million was a good step forward for first baseman, but he didn't get the long-term deal he wanted. So I think he's looking for the kind of 5-6 year deal at $24 million would be the salary for next year. That as a base, try to build off of that going forward. Whether the Mets are the team that gives that to him, whether he's able to land that in a way he couldn't last year, that's going to be an interesting story all winter.
Danny, do you agree with that? Maybe 5-6 year, $20-something million contract.
I mean, Boras will probably look for 7 or 8, but I think 4, 5, 6, around 25 to 30 AAVs is kind of where he's going to come in. I don't think there's that monster deal out there for Pete. Like, we know that Vlad signed the big deal. He's a lot younger, better overall hitter, I think, than Pete. It would have been a different story if Pete stayed red hot, as he was the first few months of the season, but he's going to be coming off a pretty good campaign. We'll just see if it's a fit. I think he wants to stay. I think in an ideal world, the Mets bring him back. I mean, he's a fan favorite. He broke the home run record. He's highly, highly valuable as an offensive piece. But I think if someone blows the Mets out of the water, they're not going to go 6-7 years. They're not going to go crazy high for him. So we'll see how it shakes out.
Tim, do you think because he broke that home run record, he'll be more willing to stay? Or now that he checked that box, he just wants the biggest, longest contract he could get?
I think like Danny said, I think it's his preference to stay. But like we saw last year, I mean, the Mets played pretty hardball with him over the course of the winter. They said basically go out, see what you can get, and then come back and we'll talk. And that big offer was not out there for him. There was that weekend, I think in December last year, it was like every other team that needed a first baseman acquired a first baseman who was not Pete Alonso. That left him and the Mets as kind of the marriage that we all knew was going to happen eventually by spring training. We'll see if those other teams have changed their evaluation of him. He is a year older. The Mets themselves don't have kind of the built-in backup plan that they claimed they had last year with Vientos and Beatty. They could have moved Vientos over to first base, played Beatty every day, been okay. They didn't have to go out and sign someone else ahead of Alonso, so they could afford to be patient with him. That's an interesting dynamic this year. They've got 2 DHs who are going to hit the free agent market, so they've got some spots open that they need to fill, and I don't think they can wait until mid-February to sign Alonso the way they were able to last year.
And also to note, his home run record now, 254, is not that many home runs. There is a chance if he leaves, a guy like Soto, who's going to be there for a long time, or Lindor can pass and be the new holder of that title. But Danny, from Steve Cohen's perspective, do you push to have him a Met for life, or do you think he and David Stearns keep the emotions out of it when negotiating?
I think Cohen's going to let Stearns do his thing. I mean, we've seen in the past that Cohen can kind of covet certain players and put his imprint on that. We saw that with the Correa deal that fell apart. We saw it with Soto. In the case of Alonso, I mean, it's a tough spot. I mean, the fans love him. He seemingly loves it in New York. Cohen has the money to really outbid anyone if he wants to do that. But they also don't have, like Tim said, they don't really have somebody to slide in there. I mean, Ryan Clifford maybe is that guy at some point in 2026 or 27, but he's got a lot of swing and miss in his game. You don't know about that. But would I be surprised if Cohen is in Stearns' ear saying, I'd prefer to have this guy back? No, but I don't think he's going to force the issue if the deal gets beyond where Stearns thinks it should be.
Another guy that has a player option after this year is Edwin Diaz. We know he's also a coveted Met. Everyone loves him. But Tim, do you expect him to opt out? And would the Mets try to commit a long-term deal for a guy that's 32 years old already?
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll opt out again, just like Alonso. I think you look at the closer market for this offseason, Diaz is going to be the best closer available. Devin Williams, who might have come into the year contending for that title, certainly hasn't had the type of season he wanted to have. Helley hasn't had the type of season he wanted to have. So it's basically going to be Diaz, Robert Suarez, or Aroldis Chapman. And Diaz, since he signed that last deal, Josh Hader has gotten a little bit more than him. So it wouldn't surprise me if, Diaz, I think the preference for him to remain in New York is strong. It wouldn't stun me if, he opts out, and then even before he hits free agency, they're able to work out something longer term with him, a 4-year deal, something like that. So I think, Diaz has proven himself to be one of those closers, one of those relievers you don't feel as anxious about investing in long term, giving that kind of 4 or 5 year deal. So it would not surprise me if there was a reunion early in November between those two sides.
Last season, I think he made fans a little nervous when he would come into games. This season, everyone seems a little more calm when he comes into games in the 9th inning. Danny, do you think the Mets made it a priority to bolster their bullpen at the deadline with the thought maybe he would opt out after the season?
Those guys are rentals, so I think they just simply wanted to improve their bullpen, and I think they envisioned a super bullpen, and it hasn't happened yet. Rogers has been a little bit up and down. We know that Helley has had his struggles here. Is it out of the realm of possibility that the Mets re-sign Ryan Helley and let Edwin Diaz walk? No, it's not something I would predict. But I think this was really about this season and about if they make the playoffs, you have hopefully this lockdown 7, 8, 9 at the end of games.
You mentioned Ryan Helley and his kind of up and down start so far for the Mets. 8 appearances, 3 losses, allowed 9 runs, an ERA over 7. He did throw a scoreless inning last night, which is kind of a relief for the Mets and the Mets fans. Tim, why do you think he's had trouble finding his footing the last couple of weeks since being in New York?
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out from people I've talked to is that he's actually throwing too many strikes, which you don't think of with a reliever, especially someone who throws 101. But the problem is that too many of Helley's 2-strike pitches have been in the strike zone. That fastball that he throws toward the top of the zone has to be above the zone rather than gettable to a hitter up in the zone. And the slider he's thrown has stayed in the bottom of the zone rather than getting under the swings of hitters. So I think if he just fine tunes his command a little bit, his control is fine. He's in the strike zone. Getting the command, getting those pitches exactly where he wants it to be will be the difference between a lights out Ryan Helley in the 8th inning and the one we've seen so far in pinstripes.
Yeah, last night he kind of got back to his footing. Do you think, Danny, it was a sign that he's back on the right track, or maybe the Mets shouldn't use him in high leverage situations until they see a couple of consistent performances in a row?
It looked to me like he's starting to turn the corner. Pretty much everything went wrong that could go wrong in his appearances on Thursday and Friday. So it was a matter of time before he looked better. And, Mendoza has to keep using him. The Mets need him to be the guy they traded for if they want to get to where they want to go. He looked totally fine to me against the Mariners. He struck out 2, worked around the 2-out walk. He's got electric stuff. He just needs to harness it a little bit better. And again, the Mets need him. So you can't go burying him on the depth chart, especially with Garrett struggling a little bit. Rogers hasn't been totally locked down. They need to keep trotting him out there and just let him work it out.